I'm here with Brad Christmas, who is the lead singer, songwriter, many things of the band Copperline, who last had an album out in 2018 and now have a new single called Lucinda. Brad, lovely to see you.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure, and it gives me the opportunity. I think I interviewed you a few years ago, but for people who don't know Copperline, and it's a good refresher for me, could you take us through the Copperline story, how and when you formed as a band?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess it's sort of, not that new. It's been around for a few years now, but I guess it was a new project for a group that have been together for a very long time. Richie and Gareth. Richie plays bass and backing vocals, does some of the songwriting too. And Gareth, the drummer, and we've been playing together in projects for probably nearly 15 years.
All right.
And Gareth and Richie have been playing together for nearly 30, so or more even. So yeah, it was kind of it had been a while since we'd done an original project. We were doing sort of cover bands, event bands, all sorts of things. We even had a kids band at one point. But we all kind of shared a passion for country music, amongst other things, and we'd been wanting to do an original project, and we'd sort of been quietly socking away a collection of songs. And I guess 2018 was kind of a good time for everybody to get in the studio and make a record and start this new project, which has been great.
So given that you have two band members who've known each other for 30 years, does that make for an interesting dynamic in a rehearsal studio or a recording studio?
Yeah, I mean, people are kind of surprised that we get on, that we don't seem to have any much internal friction. So I think it's just really good. I know a couple of people, we've had a couple of people come up and say to us, it's really obvious you guys have been in bands for a long time together, just the way that you sort of interact on stage, and there's kind of a musical chemistry that you only get from years and years and hours of in pubs and all sorts of places. So I hope I'm not sort of tempting fate here, but we seem to get on pretty well.
You've probably got a shorthand now where you just need to look at each other and don't even need to say anything if you're on stage to convey what you want to convey.
Absolutely. We've got a whole language of code words and things that to get us out of trouble and cover different scenarios. So we've built up some pretty useful shorthand for communicating with each other over the years.
So I think, adults are very hard to entertain, but I think children are probably harder to impress. So given that you performed for children, some of you in a band, did you find them the toughest critics, toughest audience?
Yeah, kids certainly tell you when they're not happy or when they don't like something. They're pretty unfiltered. And they, I say they've got pretty short attention spans, but so do some adults. So it's a good training ground, I think. With kids, you've got to keep it high energy and keep them engaged. You've got to work really hard to keep them engaged, and I think they can tell if you're phoning it in, if you're not giving it 100%. So that, I think it's a really valuable experience doing that.
Did you feel more tired after playing a gig for kids or for adults? Because I think so much energy goes into playing a show. It looks like it's one set and done, but it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Half an hour of entertaining kids is like 3 hours of a normal gig, I reckon. It's absolutely exhausting.
Well, you certainly got your match fitness or your gig fitness up doing that. Now, as I said, the album that you released in 2018 was Fords and Weatherboards. And I know that you also play as a session musician for other people. So since 2018, have you been keeping yourself busy with other people's music, shall we say?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a weird couple of years because it's been sort of periods of intense touring when things are open and then shut down for 3 months and then the same thing again. But yeah, I do a fair bit of playing for a touring company that does tribute shows. So, they'll get sort of famous singers, and we're doing a David Bowie one at the moment, but I've done everything from ABBA to REM to The Cure to disco. And one of the people I do a lot of those shows with is Steve Kilby from the church.
Right.
So we're kind of almost at the end of a tour, kind of a national tour of basically just playing all the church hits with Steve Kilby, which has been a buzz for me as a sort of lifelong fan. It's just been a thrill to play, Under the Milky Way and Unguarded Moment, those kind of great kind of classic songs, and get inside the mind of the genius who wrote them and kind of hang out with him has been a real buzz.
It must almost seem a little bit like being in a parallel dimension when you do work like that, because as you said, you've been a fan, you'd have heard those songs on the radio, and then you're sitting there on stage and have an opportunity to bring your own elements to those songs. So how did that gig come about?
Just through a tribute show, really, and Steve wanted to do this tour of just kind of classic church singles, and
Yeah.
we were playing with him, and he said, "You guys would be perfect to do this tour with." And it is really weird, sort of having someone that you've really admired, and I guess is kind of a hero, becomes a bandmate and a friend, and someone you hang out with backstage and tell jokes with, and
Yeah.
getting your undies and change before you go out on stage. But it's sort of it kind of makes it, I guess, what they do seem a bit more achievable or something. Makes it feel like something that you can do and something that you're part of. So it's it's a really, really great experience. It has been a great experience.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around your repertoire, given that you've played in all those different sorts of bands. I'm wondering how you probably haven't counted up exactly how many songs you have learnt, but I would suggest it's a lot more than most musicians.
Yeah, in the last few years, it's it'd be several hundred. And I think it gets, the older you get, the harder it gets to keep it all in there in the in the memory bank.
I don't know if it gets harder or you just have a lot in there. And so it's sort of like a computer memory. If you're still needing all of that info, it's just getting more and more full.
I'm getting close to needing an external hard drive to sort of plug into the side of my head, I think.
Dare I ask if you have, apart from playing with Steve Kilbey, if you have a favourite tribute act that you've played in, as in REM versus ABBA?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. One of my favourite shows we did, one of my favourite artists is Tom Waits. I don't know if you know Tom Waits, but we did a Tom Waits tribute, which with Dave Graney. I don't know, a guy called Dave Graney. One of my good friends, a guy called Peter Fenton, who was in a band called Crow.
Oh, yeah, I remember Crow.
Yeah. So it was just a really great, I guess it's another artist that I've really idolised for a long time, and to be able to play those songs with really great artists and really good friends, it was kind of felt like a real band, bunch of mates on the road, getting to play songs that we all loved, and everyone on that tour was a real fan. So I think that's probably the one that's meant the most to me.
So playing so much music, do you find that you don't really want to listen to music when you're at home? You sort of like, that's it, I've got enough in here.
Not at all. I'm always looking for sort of inspiration. I'm always kind of interested in hearing new things. I love to just hear new music and be inspired by new music. I think if you kind of get stuck in a rut and listen to the same things over and again, you kind of don't grow as an artist. So no, I still love listening to music as much as I did when I was 16, when I was first getting into it and getting into bands. And I think it's a really important thing to stay sort of relevant and stay creative, is to keep listening, keep growing your awareness of different types of music, and keeping up to date with what's happening now.
Yeah, I suppose it would be tempting though to not like to just think, but I think that obviously that curiosity you have about what's new is why you can keep creating wonderful songs, and that does bring me to your new song, Lucinda. First time I heard it, I felt immediately familiar, but not because it actually sounds like another song I've already heard. It just felt like you'd written an invitation in a way to the listener to come into the story that you had created. But it's a sad story. It's about a child who wasn't here for very long. So I'm wondering if you could tell me the background to the song.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm really glad you've had that reaction to it, because that's exactly, what inspired me to write it. It was written a few years ago. My wife and I lost a child in the very early stages of her life, which was, a very traumatic experience. And it was something, as a parent in that situation, you can kind of feel a bit helpless. You just want to do something, anything that you can to give them the chance to thrive, and not to be able to do anything. I wanted, I guess, a couple of things. I wanted something to celebrate her. It was a brief time, but it was still a time that meant the world to us, and I wanted something to celebrate that. And also, because she passed away at such a young age, we were the only ones that got to know her, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wanted to kind of celebrate the fact that she was here. She was
Mm-hmm.
here, and it was a short time, but it still meant the world to us. So yeah, that, and also I think as a culture we're not very good at talking about these things, but in the process of writing and playing these songs to people, it's opened up heaps of great conversations with people. A lot of people have, said that happened to me, and that song, I really identify that, and we've talked about it, and it's given people, I guess, an opportunity to talk about something that they might not have had the opportunity to, or been comfortable to, or known how to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess that's where it comes from.
Yeah, it's interesting when a child does die very young, having not been alive for very long. I guess sometimes there might be a temptation to think, oh, well, you didn't know that child, so you can't miss them the way you would miss them if they had been older, or even an adult. But I think it goes towards the nature of time, and how time is not always linear. So it doesn't matter that in this linear time frame, or as we see it, it was only a few days or whatever it was. That's a relationship that you have forever. That's your child, and you're still her parent. And so therefore the story that you're telling is as fresh now, I would think, in your emotions as it was when it happened.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's exactly how I felt. Where it came from emotionally. Is that it still, it doesn't matter how long it is. It still means the world to you as a parent. And yeah, and just because, I mean, it's very different when people can't put a face, or when they don't have experiences of that person. Exactly as you said, it can seem like they weren't around. But I mean, the one thing I wanted to do was to make sure that wherever she is, she knows that she was around, and she was valued, just as much as if she'd been here for 100 years,
Yeah. The opening line to the song, you say, no one knows what they're supposed to say, but that won't stop them saying it anyway. And as you were saying just earlier about people not knowing what to say, I think grief exposes the limitations of language in a way. We don't really have the words to say things to other people. So when someone's trying to address your grief, they might say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, which is a phrase that we all use. And I do think in those circumstances, it does really reveal how few words we have, or how few phrases we have for that. But I would imagine that your song can become a remedy for that, because you're basically saying it's okay to call it what it is, to address this child by name, or this person by name, whomever it is. Say how you feel about them. You can say those words. You can come up with different phrases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it goes back to that point we were talking about earlier of our kind of, as a culture, we're not very well prepared. We don't have the language, we don't have the kind of customs for talking about this stuff, and it can lead to some pretty sort of awkward exchanges. But I think what you said's right. I think the kind of honest response, and the best responses I had were people who said, "I've got no idea what to say to you, but I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm here for what you need. I'm here to listen, whatever." So yeah, I guess I hope in some ways that the song creates a bit of a space where we can start to work out. Develop more language around it, and become more comfortable in talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the challenge for you as a songwriter too must have been in trying to take something so huge, and something for which there are no limits, basically the amount of grief you would feel and the amount of pain you would feel, and trying to distill it into the structure of a song. And you have done it so beautifully. This song is really tightly constructed, but not in a way that feels at all overworked or forced. So I'm wondering how you even approached writing this song.
It's one of those ones, it's very rarely happened to me. I kind of, you hear those stories about Paul McCartney waking up with yesterday in his head. And this song was a little bit like that. It just kind of, I just felt like there was something there that I had to put down on paper, and it just came spilling out without much effort or, much crafting or it sort of came out fully formed pretty quickly, this song, which, to me suggests that, came from a really kind of particular emotional place.
Now, you did record it as a Copperline song. Given your extensive history as a musician, it could have just as easily have been done as a solo project, I would think. Why did you decide to take it to the band?
Just because I knew that their playing would enhance it. I sort of knew probably where it would go, but not exactly. And it took on a dimension that I didn't quite expect. But I just knew that their playing would make it a better song, and give it something. Yeah, well, I mean, a few people when I played it early, they said you have to record that just you and an acoustic guitar, which I did consider, but I think the guys playing on that really turned it into the song it is. It's sort of, they gave it a really understated, almost Springsteen kind of touch. And yeah, I really valued their input.
And you had Shane Nicholson produce it. Now, one of the things I've observed about Shane as a producer, as in listening to the music he's worked on, is that he's excellent at identifying what an artist needs and what they're great at, and letting that shine. And in this particular song, it's all the players on the song can be distinctly heard. There's nothing crowding out the central message of the song, your vocals. It's not sparsely done so much as I think elegantly done. So why did you choose Shane as your producer?
Yeah, well, for those kind of exact reasons, really. We did our first record with Shane as well. I've just always loved his as an artist, but his sort of production sense. Exactly what you said. I think he doesn't overproduce. And one thing that he does that I don't think anyone else does anywhere near as well is to capture and keep the human element in songs. There's such a temptation now to make everything perfect with production because it's so easy to do. The technology we have now, you can really eliminate every tiny error. But Shane just knows how to capture the right amount of sort of imperfections, I guess, and little kind of moments of human idiosyncrasy that make songs unique, and especially with that song. I just think he did that really nicely. It sounds like the band is sitting in a lounge room with timber floors and the creaking of pianos, and you can almost hear the room in that recording. And that's exactly why we went to him, because we knew that's the result we'd get.
Now, it's one thing to write the song and then record the song, and then you've released it to the world. And so it begins this process of starting to belong to other people, and they have their own interpretations of it and their own responses to it. You're about to play some shows that I imagine will include this song in the set list. So are you ready to have that different relationship with the song, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've sort of been playing it for a while now in sets just to kind of road test it and see how people react. So I've sort of got some idea, but I've also been surprised just in the last couple of days. We've had more reaction than anything we've ever released from people. People I know really well who might not know that we'd been through that, or people who've been through a similar experience. So yeah, I sort of feel like I've had a bit of practice at talking about it and seeing how people react to it. But yeah, I'm certainly kind of looking forward to now that it's released, kind of playing it in front of more people.
And one of the places you'll be playing it is at the revised / postponed Tamworth Country Music Festival. So I think you have a show at the Welder's Dog, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. No, we've got a few shows up there. We've got the Welder's Dog on Friday, the 22nd of April. That's, I think, at 3:00. And then we're playing at the Fan Zone stage there on Peel Street for anyone who knows Tamworth or know where that is. Later that evening, I think about 6:00. And then on the Sunday, the 24th, we're heading out to Nundle, just outside Tamworth, to a great pub called the Peel Inn. We've played a bit. So we'll be doing an afternoon show there as well.
And do you have plans to record more songs, or have you recorded some more songs with the band working towards an album or EP, something similar?
Yeah, we've actually got a whole album recorded.
Right. There you go. I didn't know that. There you go. That's why I asked that perfectly innocent question.
There's no reason why you would. It's actually been, we started the project a year ago.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been twice COVID interrupted. So we sort of, we kind of did bits of recording in between lockdowns. So we've kind of been sitting on it, but it's hard to, it sort of feels a bit pointless to release much when you can't tour, So the last COVID lockdown sort of delayed us release a little bit. But yeah, we've definitely got a full album that we're going to release this year, and it's all ready to go, and we can't wait. We feel a bit like kids at Christmas. On Christmas Eve, we've got all these prezzies we want to hand out, but we're not allowed till Christmas Day.
And I would imagine also you have to fit in any gigs around your already quite busy schedule, what sounds like a busy schedule.
Yeah, well, the last couple of months have been kind of crazy, you've got promoters who have to reschedule stuff, but they also they've missed out on a year's worth of income or whatever, so they want to cram in as much stuff as possible to make up for that. So yeah, it's been a pretty wild couple of months, and we want to, when we do this, I want to really kind of be in the right headspace to dedicate ourselves to it. So, but yeah, no, now's the time. That sort of April, we're hoping will kind of start a fair bit of touring through the rest of the year.
Fantastic. Well, Brad, thank you very much for sharing your very special song with audiences. I think it will benefit a lot of people you may never hear from, even if it's just to start to give them the words to talk about things they've been through themselves. So congratulations to you for writing such a beautiful song, to the band for performing it, and hope to see you in Tamworth.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great to chat.
Pleasure.